Switzerland, and in Italy. Florence was where Diana believed Charles and Camilla revisited royal history at her great-grandmother Alice Keppel's secret villa, a gift from King Edward VII.
So Camilla's family was very proud of the mistress in their family, who was mistress of a king, and they celebrated her and spoke of her proudly. And then Camilla emulated her.
Camilla took art lessons to share Charles's passion for painting. She encouraged him. He took pride in his results. It was an ideal partnership.
Maybe if Charles and Camilla were to go on, not being able to live openly together, but seeing each other most of the time and having periods of absence from each other, they would be able to sustain this very satisfactorily for them both. They would always have this rather romantic, passionate edge to the relationship.
At a birthday party for Camilla's sister held at Ormley Lodge, home of Lady Annabel Goldsmith, Diana confronted her rival.
He expected to go on his own. Diana insisted on coming, and they went in the car together, and she remembers him as being very uncomfortable. And so she confronted Camilla. She asked her about the relationship. Camilla was evasive, and from that moment onwards, all Charles's friends, and what she called dismissively, the Highgrove set, continued to perpetuate this lie that Charles and Camilla were just friends.
In June 1990, the dangers of polo were evident when the Prince, an enthusiastic player, fell heavily, sustaining a badly broken arm that needed surgery. Diana continued the charade of the caring wife, visiting her husband in hospital and taking him home to recuperate at Highgrove. Once there, Diana left and Camilla nursed Charles. The broken bone refused to heal and caused Charles such pain that another operation was necessary. A specialist had to reset the injured arm. Camilla secretly visited Charles in hospital. Diana spent much of her time at the hospital meeting other patients, but afterwards she repeated the practiced performance of a dutiful wife, aware that the cameras were clicking and the press were covering Charles's departure. Concealing a sham marriage in which Camilla was the third party, they went home. Camilla would enter through Highgrove's gardens the moment Diana had gone. Diana lost her home as well as her husband to Camilla.
I mean, I think a lot of people who not only cared about Diana, but cared about the whole notion of the royal family being able to choose a 19-year-old bride for the future king and have her give birth to his children and then be so unceremoniously dumped and have her heart broken. In some ways, we understand why Prince Charles did what he did. He had to have a wife, he had to have children, he couldn't have the woman he wanted. But she, Camilla, she was, you know, a country housewife, bringing up her children. She's the one who should have stepped aside and said, oh no, I can't do this to this girl. I can't do this, you know, because I'm decent and human and I can't watch this girl suffering and becoming suicidal and mentally unstable and ruin her life and her children's lives. Camilla's the one who should have stepped aside.
Eventually, servants revealed details of Charles's conduct. Camilla had destroyed the fairy tale.
Royal mistresses are exceedingly unpopular. There have been some popular royal mistresses, but they're very, very rare. Royal mistresses are unpopular first because they're marriage breakers, and certainly most women in a population will always side against somebody who is seen as a marriage breaker.
Diana had an affair with Guards officer James Hewitt over a period of 5 years. She fantasized about breaking free from her marriage, but at that stage it was an impossible dream. There were other loves too, possibly 7 during her lifetime, all hidden beneath a veneer of duty.
Now this is the spinners, the story spinners, who felt they had to trash Diana in order to make Charles look good. So they made it out like she was some sort of harlot running around with everybody who worked in the castle and so forth. But Diana wasn't like that. And she knew that as the female in a marriage, you cannot be loose like the men are. So the chance that she was running out having sex with people in the stables is very, very highly unlikely. But that is just part of the smear campaign they did against Diana, because that's how women were treated.
Diana took her public position seriously. She performed the traditional roles like being Colonel-in-Chief of the Royal Hampshire Regiment with grace and with a smile. She was the ideal choice as Princess of Wales and future Queen. Diana delighted in criticisms of Camilla, who was older, badly groomed, and much less attractive than herself.
When you see her in the flesh, she does have something special. She's got strong features. She may not be a conventional beauty. The great endearing thing about her is she doesn't care anyway. You know, she's got a fag on and she's got her hair all funny, like a stabbed sofa look, and then she's got her wellies on.
I mean, one tabloid newspaper recently put a picture of Camilla beside a horse and said, which one would you rather marry? Or which one would you rather go to bed with? She has had to put up with some brutal publicity.
I was in America once and saw a television show where someone described her as looking like a bag full of spanners, which baffled the Americans because they don't have spanners over there. But anyway, she has had to put up with some pretty gross insults about her looks.
I think Charles himself is quite sloppy in his personal habits. He's very bad with paperwork, but of course he has a support system. He has 2 valets paid for by the state to clean up his clothes after him and wash his socks and make sure he's got clean underpants every day and help him get dressed in the mornings. So maybe he quite likes, amid the formal world in which he lives, this kind of informality that she brings to his life.
Charles and Camilla enjoyed secret rendezvous all over Britain. They regularly met at country houses such as Garraby Hall in Yorkshire, home of the Earl of Halifax. Eaton Hall, the Cheshire estate of the Dowager Duchess of Westminster, was another. A familiar retreat was Northmoor, then the Norfolk stud farm of Hugh and Emily Van Cutsum. Close friends protected the couple's privacy. The famously elegant, stately home of the Earl and Countess of Shelburne, Bowood, was a favourite meeting place. Earl Shelburne challenged newspaper reports of their visits to protect Charles.
Psychologically, it's very important to have a group of friends who will see you as a couple and acknowledge you as a couple and give you not just the emotional and psychological support, but also lend perhaps homes and opportunities where everything can be kept in its concealed situation, primarily so as not to upset anyone else. It's not so much deceitful as protective, I think.
It's deceit.
Behind the fences of Camilla's home, Middlewick House, Charles was a regular visitor. On one occasion, the press got wind that the heir to the throne was staying over. Huddled under rugs in the back seat of a chauffeur-driven car, Prince of Darkness was forced to experience the indignity of a hasty escape into the night. Impervious to this kind of evidence, Charles's office continued to undermine Diana's credibility.
We were being told that Charles and Diana were trying to get their life back together again. And this was after the Andrew Morton book had first revealed Diana's worries about Camilla, and before the actual breakup. So they were due to go on a royal tour of Korea. And we were asked to hold off any kind of criticism of Charles and Diana. Meanwhile, the spin doctors at the palace were saying that Charles was trying to help Diana through this very difficult period of time that she was having, and that all this fantasy that she was having about Camilla being Charles's mistress was the problem of her illness and her bulimia. So they were all bad-mouthing her like mad.
Again, they're bashing Diana, this mental disorder, bulimia, and so forth. They're just trying to bash her to make her look less than and to allow Charles to do what he wants and go on having children with Camilla.
A scheduled royal visit to Korea in early November 1992 went ahead, but the tour was a mistake. The couple offended their hosts with their personal animosity towards one another. Quite simply, Charles and Diana could not stand each other's presence.
It was the most disastrous public relations exercise, and it was quite clear that the two loathed each other. I mean, you only look at the pictures, and they were called the glums and all sorts of awful things.
The poisonous atmosphere between the couple meant that they were never allowed to represent Britain abroad again. The rift between them was now beyond repair and disguise.
We decided that the time was to come out and say that this is actually the truth of this relationship, that all the bad-mouthing of Diana and the alleged fantasy of Camilla, she was in fact true, was in fact true, and that she was right, and that the palace were putting out the most terrible smokescreen. No doubt they didn't believe it, but that Charles in fact had been doing all the things that Diana said.
The Mirror newspaper exposed the story of a taped telephone call between Charles and Camilla made in 1989.
Yeah, I think you're feeling all well now. Oh, just a little worship I well of you. I can't bear a Sunday night without you. It's like that program Stop a Week. I can't stop a week without you.
It pretty quickly became clear that this was indeed Charles and Camilla. It was what the person who brought it to us said it was. I thought that it was actually a very good imitation of a caricature of the Prince of Wales, which indeed it was, because he was caricaturing himself.
The couple talked in intimate language and made private jokes that showed Charles had a schoolboy mentality.
A pair of knickers. I think you're going to come back as a pair of knickers. Got to be the Tampax.
People have not forgotten that appalling thing about wanting to come back as a Tampax. That's going to stick to him, like various aspects of the Monica Lewinsky affair will always stick to Clinton. I think there's a lot of parallels between Charles and the Clinton episode. The President of the United States, like the future king, who's also going to be head of the church, is supposed to and expected to set some kind of moral example. And both of them have suffered enormously on that front. They've both been sorely embarrassed by publication of transcripts of very seedy, seamy tapes. In Charles's case, it's something that he's going to find very hard to shed.
Oh, I thought it was so much to get out there.
Outwardly, nothing changed at Middlewick House, but Camilla's secrets continued to unravel in the press.
It seemed such an invasion of privacy, but it was quite clear that these two had a tremendously sexy and passionate relationship, and that she was able to touch those parts of Charles that perhaps other people hadn't been able to reach, which is his mind, his eroticism, and all that kind of thing. So they clearly have a very, very strong physical, sexual base, and that's a wonderful factor and an enduring factor for a long-term relationship.
Diana feared that she would be divorced against her wishes and lose her children to the royal family. She took the unwise step of going public in a shattering television interview. She confessed to an affair with Major James Hewitt, but blamed Camilla for the breakdown of her marriage. Although Charles had spent a lifetime dictated by duty and ceremony, he too had destroyed the mystique of the monarchy in revelations to his biographer Jonathan Dimbleby, televised in 1994. He admitted adultery with Camilla.
He answered truthfully about the adultery. Now, the immediate reaction was very well done him, this is very brave of him to admit his adultery. It wasn't anything of the sort, because it unleashed all those demons of the lies that had gone before.
In retrospect,
And he never admitted to the children he had with Camilla.
Charles's confession of adultery on the Dimbleby program in 1994 was the biggest mistake he's ever made. It's quite ironic because Diana actually benefited from being honest and making honest confessions, and people loved her for her faults as much as her strengths. When Charles tried the same tactic of being honest, it just rebounded on him hugely. And of course, he didn't think at all about what impact this would have on his own children, let alone the Parker Bowles children. All sorts of people were involved who he didn't think of. That moment, of course, precipitated the eventual divorce between the Parker Bowleses. Andrew Parker Bowles had put up for 20 years with the Prince having an affair with his wife because he thought it was his national duty, I think.
Wrong. He was paid to be the beard for Camilla. He never wanted Camilla. He never wanted to marry her, and I don't believe he ever had sex with her, her children, or the children of Charles. He was just the beard. And he was paid well
to do so, but that was the last straw for him, Charles making this so public. Did he think of Andrew Parker Bowles' reaction when he gave that interview? I don't think so, but the divorce proceedings followed very hard upon.
And Parker Bowles skipped away to his girlfriend that he had loved for those 20 years, and that relationship didn't last long because I'm told that after a few years she died.
Although a Catholic, Andrew Parker Bowles remarried soon after his divorce came through. His new wife Rosemary enjoys invitations to Royal Ascot and visits to royal homes. Now divorced Camilla, with the help of Charles's good friend Lord Halifax, bought a new country home, Raymill House, 10 miles from Highgrove. Charles redesigned the garden, set in 17 acres. Camilla fell in love with the Wiltshire mansion's ornate rooms, its antique furniture, and the king-size canopied bed. At the time of his divorce in 1996, Charles and Camilla were secretly photographed together at the Welsh home of their friends Nick and Suki Paravicini. The press had been tipped off by a mystery woman. In June 1997, Camilla crashed her car driving to Highgrove to meet Charles. She escaped prosecution, which led to accusations of special treatment because of her status as a royal mistress.
I know that Prince Charles has advised her, which is the same as instructing her, not to read about herself in the newspapers, because if you read about yourself, you're going to get hurt. And that seems typical of their relationship, actually. This is the way we do it, so don't do this, and you won't have to read that. And I'm sure that she respects that, because she respects most of the things he says.
When Camilla asked the newly engaged Diana if she intended to hunt, the princess suspected that Charles and Camilla secretly met through the hunting fraternity. Camilla is at her best on horseback, showing the humorous side of her personality that Charles loves.
I think the fact that Camilla exudes a kind of quality of friendliness, of ease. I mean, she's prepared to muck in with Charles. She doesn't have tremendous airs and graces. She's coming from the same place as he's coming from. And he feels very comfortable with her.
Through the National Osteoporosis Society, Camilla has found a suitable cause to launch her charitable work.
It's apparent that Camilla, in her own walk of life, is tremendously popular. She does a lot of fundraising, the people of charities she works with. She's very outgoing and people adore her, so she's very fitted to the role. She could easily carry off an ambassadoress type role, equally as well as Diana.
Not everyone would agree. Diana's ability to empathize with suffering wherever she found it was unique and cannot and should not be imitated. Strangely, Diana seemed to have some sympathy for Camilla once her marriage was over and she was a free woman.
I had lunch with Diana, just the two of us, about 9 months before she died, when she was in more mellow mood about the whole issue of Charles and Camilla. She'd relaxed since the divorce settlement. She wasn't quite as spiky in what she said about Charles, and she wasn't quite as spiky as what she said about Camilla, the famous third person in their marriage. And she said to me, look, why don't they get married? I'm past caring, was how she put it. She wished Charles reasonably well. Why shouldn't he marry Camilla?
These enduring memories of Diana's last campaign against landmines in Sarajevo, just days before her death, have elevated the late princess to a near religious status. But how has her death affected Charles?
A great deal of trouble has been removed from his life, and that's clear. A great deal of trouble, and it was only going to get worse. They were battling over the children, battling for their affections. I mean, Diana was, she was weak in many ways. She was a deeply flawed person. She knew that, we knew that.
She wasn't deeply flawed. She was created to be deeply flawed so that they could toss her away. And who did conspire to get rid of Diana? Who would benefit? Camilla, Charles.
And it's ridiculous to make her out to be a saint. She was human, if nothing else.
For several months after Diana's death, Camilla stayed hidden away. Comparisons between the princess and the woman who destroyed her marriage were frequent. In the winter, she and Charles hunted. They were careful not to be photographed together. Aware of public sentiment after Diana's death, Charles and Camilla put on hold their plans to appear in public together. Instead, they weekended at secret locations, such as Llanover in Wales, where they stayed at the secluded leafy estate of Robert Herbert and his wife Philippa.
There has been that element of thrill and secrecy, which is undeniable. I mean, no one who's ever had an affair, a love affair, would deny that there is a thrill in using code names and secret trysts, and it adds to, the frisson is, we can meet on Saturday night and nobody knows but us, and then, someone will set apart a magnificent bedroom suite and give them their privacy and tiptoe around them, and there must be a huge element of being terribly special for all these years.
Well, you can see how it's messed up the kids.
Charles says Camilla is the non-negotiable part of his life. His staff now have to include her when planning his private diary.
There's no doubt at all that he set up this network, and he has plenty of people working for him. He doesn't have to actually make the phone calls himself to say, I'll be down at 2:30 and perhaps you'd like to invite so-and-so to dinner. He's got a whole army of people only too happy to do that for him. And of course, they have grudgingly come to accept Camilla too.
At Bowood House, she is welcomed by Earl and Countess Shelburne, but some aristocrats put loyalty to the Queen first and avoid Camilla.
Camilla isn't really necessarily the top layer of aristocracy, so it's probably quite tough for her trying to fit in here. I mean, you'll have Prince Charles, who is, of course, the most VIP of them all. Then you'll have this whole layer of squirearchy, which is what he's enjoying their hospitality when he's down here. Where does Camilla fit into that? She's neither one nor the other. She's great on horseback, but around the dinner table, don't know, she hasn't got quite the same breeding.
Since his arm injury, Charles plays less polo, but when he does, everything has to be right for him in recognition of his special status as the Prince of Wales.
Everything has to bend for Charles, and that includes Camilla's wishes and Camilla's life. And there's no doubt that this isn't speculation, I know this, she defers to him. If he's in the room, she will address him as Sir, the same as everyone else. And I don't know about what they get up to in private, although we've had a glimpse of that through the Camilla Gate tape. But I mean, it's clear that he is the Lord and Master. He is the ultimate chauvinist, and she allows him to be that.
Charles and Camilla needed to stop bouncing their genitalia up and down on those horses so frequently. They just became hornier and hornier.
Knows that the key to the public approval of Camilla as his partner is the acceptance of her by William and Harry. But he is cautious.
Charles kept his sons away from Camilla while Diana was alive for fairly obvious reasons. I think the late princess would have taken a very dim view of her boys cozying up to the woman she regarded as the woman who'd broken up her marriage. It's very difficult, I think, from their point of view. They want their father to be happy, and clearly this is the woman who makes their father happy. At the same time, they must be aware this is also the woman that ruined their mother's life, in her view, and that's going to be very difficult for them to forget.
When Camilla held a party for Charles at Highgrove, William was invited, and so was Harry.
But I think of the two boys, it's probably Harry who feels most unable to meet this woman who he felt made his mother terribly, terribly unhappy. I think